Welcome to CareerView. This is the podcast where we ask questions students want to know when it comes to pursuing a career path. I'm your host, Nirajit Sharmal, and each episode I will ask questions on behalf of students across the country from secondary schools and universities what they want to know when it comes to pursuing their dream job. For this episode, we'll be asking our top questions that have been submitted by students on our CareerView website who are interested in becoming a physiotherapist. Now, to answer some very intriguing questions, we're joined by 29-year-old physiotherapist Tom Payton, who has been practicing musculoskeletal physiotherapy for the last 5 years and currently working as a rehab consultant. Tom, at a very young age, was a competitive athlete and played a lot of footy, where he unfortunately experienced a lot of injuries. But also, fortunately, it ultimately led to his passion to become a physiotherapist. And he's got a lot of good inputs to share with us today. So, let's get into it. All right, and we are back, and welcome to the show, Tom. It's really great to have you here today. How's everything going?
Yeah, it's been really good, bit of a whirlwind of a week. I had my first student with the new job today, so that's been interesting, getting someone to teaching someone the role that I've been performing over the last 10 months or so since I started or changed role post-COVID. But that's been interesting. It's been insightful for me. I feel like I've learnt a lot in the workers' comp space, so it's been really interesting. I'm still learning as a physio, so days are tiring, being just like constantly being on your feet with new information to absorb, particularly being in different spaces. So no, it's good, but yeah, busy as well at the same time.
Very busy and sounds very full on. And I saw you before. You can see that a long day's work definitely has its effects, and it's good to stay busy, I think, to some capacity. But Tom, once again, great to have you here.
And thanks for having me.
Before we jump into our questions asked by students when it comes to becoming a physiotherapist, the first thing I want to ask you is what does a physio do? And more importantly, what are some of the misconceptions of a physiotherapist in the perspective of a high school student or for a university student pursuing this pathway?
Yeah, so it's funny you say this because I remember at my first uni lecture, they had our teacher kind of stand out in front of us and they said, 70% of you think that a physio is purely just a sports physio or someone that you see in a room that like helps your back or helps your knee or is a person that kind of fixes you up on the footy field and that's why you're driven to do the course. But as we were kind of talking about before, for me, that is a completely different understanding now. We have, what I was saying was we have kind of three different facets and that's how I kind of branch physio into. So we have the cardiopulmonary side of it, which is basically it looks at your lung function and the heart in one system. You have the neurological side, which is basically how your nerves function throughout your body and how that relates to everything essentially in terms of movement. And sensations as well, because it's important for balance and everything else from that. And then the musculoskeletal side, which is what the 70% were thinking at the time. So that's you bust your knee, someone comes and helps you, someone gives you a couple of exercises, and then they help you with your rehabilitation from there.
Right.
Just to kind of go into a little bit more detail as well for that. For a physio, for me, there's kind of two different areas, which is the private and public physios. So your public physios are the ones that generally work in hospitals, or they're basically paid for by the government through the government health system. So that can be if you go back into those facets, if you have pneumonia and you go to hospital, then someone who's in the cardiopulmonary section will help you with your lungs, or if you've got COVID, someone's going to be suctioning COVID out of your lungs at some point, potentially if you're in ICU, which is really common at the start. It's not so much now because we've got vaccines and everything. If you have a stroke, so that's the neurological side, they're the ones that'll get you kind of walking, get your movement and function better. And that's kind of one of the really interesting facets that people don't really think about. And it's one that kind of drew me to being a physio after I graduated, because I really enjoyed the work that we did there. And then there's also the There's also the musculoskeletal side, which is in like if you have a knee replacement or someone has like a big injury, then the musculoskeletal physios will help to maximise rehabilitation, maximise function.
So there's so many different elements to a physio, really, and it's quite broad as opposed to be so singular as many people might conceive it to be.
Yeah, and then that private side is just like the privatisation. So other clinics basically looking at those three facets. So instead of seeing someone in a hospital, you might not be that at that point, and you might go to a clinic to see someone for like the knee pain or the back pain or like the sports clubs and that sort of thing. Or you might, if you've post-stroke, everyone wants to get home. So there's private practice physios that will look purely at neurological development. Then there's other facets like peds, like pregnancy stuff as well. So there's so many broad areas that is like expansive in the physio world that for me, my concept of what a physio is, and it's like kind of this umbrella term that kind of tries to maximize function for people with those kind of key elements. And each one of those areas that I was talking about before has an overlay effect on each other. And you can't kind of treat a patient well nowadays without having an understanding of each of those key areas, because they're all interlapping to make the holistic body.
And I think that's such an eye-opener for anyone who's actually wanting to pursue this pathway, Tom, that there is so many elements, and it seems like you're always going to be learning on the job.
Yeah, well, you kind of have to be, because the reason why physio is the job and the profession that is because we're purely evidence-based. So you actually should not be, or you shouldn't be doing the things you're doing unless you've got evidence to say why you're doing what you're doing. So you have to be able to justify your treatments. Which kind of sets us apart from a lot of other areas. So not to say that other areas don't work at all, but there's a massive body of research, and that's why universities like really do run like a lot of physio courses, and we've got some great research schools. But like all the different treatments that we have, they are tested and made sure that they have a certain standard before we do them in hospitals, in practice, and everything else from there. And the ones that don't match the accreditation eventually get phased out. So what you learn in a physio degree, or by the time these students are going through uni, if they want to do physio after me, they'll probably have a completely different course than what I learned.
Wow. Yeah.
So you need to be constantly learning and constantly adjusting the ways you practice in order to upskill, essentially, and that's recognised by like the Australian Physiotherapy Association as well.
Absolutely unbelievable, Tom. Jumping into our questions that we have for you today,
Awesome.
ask my students. The first question is, what does a normal day look like for you?
Yeah, so in order to answer this one properly, I kind of just got to give a little bit of backstory about my journey as a physio. So I originally started as a musculoskeletal private practice physio, pretty much straight out of uni. I got like a lot of work in kind of those three areas. So I graduated and said, I'm going to just learn as much as I can in the shortest period of time. So I kind of worked in all three areas that we talked about before. I have kept going with my musculoskeletal side of the fence like pretty much the whole way through, as well as maintaining like a fair few neuro clients who come and see me in a private practice setting, not so much in hospitals. After COVID hit, I started doing what was more in the workers' comp side of things. So if you have a injury on a work site, then the insurance company basically pays for everything. So they'll actually go and see physios, doctors, surgeons, whatever it is that's required in order to make you medically like as close to medically highest capacity possible, so you can get back to a goal, which might be return to your job or just get back to as high as you can functionally. So I actually manage claims and oversee the return to work phase of like complex claims that get sent to my company. So the insurance companies like to have like someone who's medically trained to oversee these claims. So I do 3 days a week doing that, and I also do 3 days a week in the clinic. I'll touch on the workers' comp stuff when I need to, but I'm assuming that most people want to understand the musculoskeletal side of the fence. So I did the workers' comp today, and that was a 9 to 5 gig pretty much.
Right.
So that's pretty much me going around and like managing claims. I go and see GP appointments. I go and see I go and see like surgeon appointments, then I'll write people's reports to say where they are and where they are in terms of their rehab and that sort of thing. But as a physio, your days can vary significantly if you're in a clinic. So I've got my day on Monday is a 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. start and finish, and then I've pretty much blocked out my day of patients. So my patients will be either initial assessments, follow-ups. I do classes which are movement rehab classes, and then also like the odd Pilates movement class that we kind of have in there. I'll do that 3 days a week, and then I'll do a Friday which will be kind of 8 o'clock till about 3 o'clock, so a bigger day. It seems better because you've got a smaller time to treat, except than like a 9 to 5, which is a longer day, except you can't spend a massive amount of time, or you can't spend a 13-hour day or a 10-hour day treating, because it just zaps you more than what it would if you were doing like reports and that sort of thing, because you require so much brain thought treating, and like you have to assess every patient very differently.
Right. And is that a principle that you've adopted where you can actually balance your time to make sure that you're efficient at what you do? Or do people struggle with, let's say, a work-life balance when it comes to the hours, when it comes to working as a physio?
No, like I remember when I was purely working as a musculoskeletal physio, which was only probably like, I don't know, a year ago or so. Your work-life balance is pretty good, but there's some obviously some negatives to just doing that one field, but yeah, your work-life balance is very good being a physio, as long as you can like pick hours, or you're working at a clinic that you can kind of choose your time. When you start, you get shafted with late night shifts. You might have the 8 p.m. finishes, the 7 p.m. finishes, which I do one of, but then you also get eventually get the routine that you like. So you can do, I used to do a 6 a.m. till a 1 o'clock, which so I got the whole Arvo off on a Friday. So I was just having the best time ever, surfing and doing all the golf stuff. That was great. Absolutely.
No, that sounds great. Tom, the next question that we have for you is, was it difficult to find a job once you finished your degree?
Nah, mate. Like, as a physio, you are highly, particularly right now, you're highly, highly employable as soon as you graduate. As people who are kind of looking at or have an understanding of what the degree entails, it's a 4-year course where you do a lot of study. So it's a pretty challenging degree, but once you graduate, you're highly proficient to be able to at least start work and treat patients. You've got to have obviously more training, good bosses that'll give you oversight, but if there was a new grad that was half decent out right now, my work would snap them up like that. So you can definitely get work pretty quickly in the field that you want. So some of the more popular fields or the more niche fields would be like your peds physios. They would not struggle to get work, but they might have to work a little bit harder or they'd have to apply for more roles. If you want to work in a hospital as like a stroke physio or someone that's like in the neurological field, then that might be a little bit more challenging. But generally, if you want to get a job, it's pretty easy. And once you've been a physio for a little while, you probably never not have a job if you're half decent as well.
So the job guarantee in that regard is very high for this field.
Absolutely, yeah. If you were to go out of work for a little bit, you would like 100% get back into it pretty quickly.
Wow, that is very reassuring and certainly good to know. Moving on to our next question, Tom, asked by students. What is the most challenging aspect of your role?
Most challenging aspect of my role is probably dealing with patients that are like very highly complex. As a physio, you're kind of dealing with like not just people's functional capacity, which I've talked about before, but you deal with the neurological side of emotions. So we're understanding a lot in the physio world that pain is not just purely one area that is inflamed or sore. It is like the lifestyle factors of like a hard day at work, of like the fight that they might have had with their partner the night before, the lack of sleep. So if someone is emotionally charged, then their pain increases. And being able to relay like that sort of information to a patient that might not want to hear that, or that might not like understand that, is really challenging. Or even changing someone's beliefs about pain and everything that surrounds it is hard. Like it's not an easy thing to do, because every time you treat someone, they've got a belief on what they think they're going to get from you, and you, if you want to give them the best treatment possible, have to do your best to give them the most updated evidence that I was kind of talking about before on the reason why they might be feeling the symptoms that they are. Everyone has this idea of like arthritis, that's going to give me pain, I'm done long term, that's me, I'm my back's cooked. But it's not always the case. If you can, like, if you tell them, like, if you strengthen up and you do all the right things to like move efficiently, then like your pain won't always be there. Then people kind of like find those sort of concepts that they haven't always learnt difficult to take on board. So if you're talking about emotional balance as well, then like that does play into pain. So that's difficult to change someone's mind on as well.
How do you address that, I guess? I mean, that's not part of the job description in some respect. You've come in out of a degree, you've learned certain sciences and elements of what you need to do as part of your job, but then here you are thrown in with almost what it seems like you're providing therapy and counselling.
Yeah, so you do provide that sort of like emotional support at times, because pain heightens emotions as well. So like there's no doubt that whenever anyone's in pain for like because they've hurt their knee, they're going to be in a crappy mood. If you've hurt your back and you've been sore for 4 years chronically, then like what do you reckon your mood's going to be like? Pretty average. So if that is heightening someone's pain response, then like absolutely it's going to be hard to change their mindset on what they think. If someone thinks that when they go to a physio they just want to get a back rub and everything's going to be okay, if you're saying that actually, well, the last 6 physios you've seen have given you a back rub and you're still sore, what does that mean? It's not going to be the answer to your long term. So why don't we try something different? Like the trick is, and the way you get around it is, you got to show them bit by bit that things work. And if you can prove to someone that their pain's going to ease, like with movement and correct movement in a certain way, then they're going to have more belief in what you're doing than if you just give them the same treatment that they've had over and over again. So yeah, pretty much it is that the answer in short is assessment and then reassessment.
Very insightful, Tom. Very insightful. Next question that we have for yourself, and it's on the flip side of what's most challenging. The question is, what do you find rewarding about your work?
Yeah, so the reason why I probably started my role was pretty much because you're directly able to help someone in like who needs your help as well. So the most rewarding thing is that you get gratitude straight up. So if you can do a really good job with a patient and they take on board what you're saying, then they become really appreciative of what you do, and that's a really nice feeling to get back. And you can get that from like any of those facets of physio. If you can help someone and make someone's life better, like whether it be like pain wise, whether it be like even emotionally better, then like it does make you like feel good, and it makes you want to keep striving and keep doing the work that you are doing.
Look, I can certainly see how rewarding this career can be, especially understanding from yourself. This role is so hands-on. You're dealing with people every single day, and each client is different. And to see that you're making progress and supporting their well-being, I can imagine this can make you feel really good for a very long time in your career. So moving on, our next question that we have for you, Tom, is how much training is required on the job before you can be independent in the workplace?
Yeah, so everyone will probably answer this one slightly differently. I think, like, honestly, it depends a lot on how hard you want to work at uni. So, like, I think that plays a major role into it. So how prepared you are out of uni. Like, obviously anyone, like, if you come out, like, anyone's going to struggle with really complex patients. You get that 10-year back pain, or that like really, really like poor belief system that's like feeding into something that you might not even know what's going on. It's going to be pretty difficult to treat them, and you've got to have a lot of training to be able to help those people. But then you also get patients that like you can make a difference really, really quickly. In order to like, if you just say how much is required to be proficient at what you do, it's a really, really, really difficult question.
Yeah.
I would say like you've got to be out in the field for at least like 4 years to be able to say you've got your head around it. But at the same time, like I was like, everyone's 2 years out and they go, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at my job here. And you can first year that your first patient out, you might do really well with them and feel like this is going really well. But it's only until you start to see complex ones that you're like, hang on, I need to take a different approach with that. And having that tool belt where you've got your clinical tool belt that you can actually like try different methods or like work around different belief systems, that's when the challenges kind of come. But that's when you also get your best rewards because you're helping people in a better way than what you would have thought you could previously.
There is so many elements of the role that you have, and one thing is about exposure, but you never know because you're dealing with people at the end of the day. So it's emotions, it's different scenarios at any given time. So being, I guess, for our listeners, they're very open is what you're saying, Tom, ultimately to understand that it really could be different at any given day. Yeah.
Like as I said, like to be proficient, like, and you see your first 4 patients, if they're quite straightforward, then you can do an absolutely awesome job and you can make a massive difference very quickly. The same thing if you get 4 really hard ones straight up and they're like complex injuries, and we see complex injuries pretty regularly. You're going to find it pretty difficult. So as I said, like I still see patients today, and I've got physios that I work with that still see patients that they go and they've been physios for 10 plus 15 plus years and they go, oh, I'm confused with it, and refer on because the person that like who's had training in that field might help them out more than what they have, and they might have been in their field less than they have. So it really is like, because the body's so complex, it does require like you to have a collaborative approach with all therapists to be able to get the best results.
Very insightful, Tom. Next question that we have, one of the more popular questions among many students here is, does the career pay well? And if you don't mind breaking down the details for us, when you start off at uni and you're working as a young physio to, working up the years and getting more experience and exposure, what does that pay look like, and does it work well for you?
Yeah, so the pay structure for physio would depend on what the clinic is going from. So I'll talk from purely private practice physio. If we want to go from the public health system, then we can. So if you join a public health system, then I think you get, I want to say like the 75 grand straight out probably. So if you go straight into like a hospital, then that will incrementally increase until probably 4 years down the track or 5 years down the track where you might be up around 90 grand. So it's very much like a government job where you just gradually climb a scale. It doesn't really matter about how good you are. It's more about how long you've been in the job. If you're a private physio, which is similar to what I am, whether that's a neuro, whether that's a musculoskeletal physio, so you will be basically on a retainer generally. So you'll basically be paid a wage that's quite small. So I think the wage that is the award wage is about $32.50 per hour.
Wow.
So that's basically, what if you don't see anyone for that week, you'll get paid $32 an hour, which ends up being about 65 grand if you work 38 hours. Keep in mind that, as I said before, you don't want to probably work 38 hours straight off the bat as a physio. You'd find it really hard to be able to keep the flow of knowledge between patients and the clinical reasoning, we call it, between patients solid, because eventually if you do a 13-hour block, everyone's going to look the same by the end of it, because you're only seeing the big blocks rather than the smaller pictures put together. So it's about like base rates. If say you did 30-hour weeks, you'd probably get paid about 50 grand or whatever it is. That you guys can do the maths at home. So then after that, you get to a point where you get commission on top of that. So commission looks at, I think the award commission is generally 43% of what you see on a caseload. So say you saw someone that came in and had paid $100, then you get $43 of that. But that's only once you get over that retainer. So it might be that you see you might have one really busy week and then you hit your retainer. 43% of what you saw ended up being $2,000, then if your retainer was sitting at around $1,000, then you would get a bonus of $1,000 in there.
Right.
It's not that, like, that's cool. That's a fair few patients in that time. I think, like, depending on how busy the clinic is, I've had really busy clinics where we've seen lots and lots of people, but the ones that kind of do well, they kind of cut back on the amount that, like, they increase the amount of time that they actually see the patients for. So they kind of cap out, I reckon, at probably about $80,000 you would make if you, like, pushed yourself, or maybe even like up to 90, depending on how busy you were. But as I said, like, if you've been in a position where we are like COVID, you generally don't get paid if you're a physio. So that constantly brings down that amount that you'll make. So again, like, it sits around that. It probably sits around that 65 to about like up to 90. That doesn't change for a long time from the physio side of the fence. So people probably are sitting here listening, holy shit, like, I'm getting like minimum $70,000 straight out of uni if I do the 38-hour week. The thing that makes physio really hard, and I haven't said this before, but I think the physio lifespan for a career is only about 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah, so I think that's the general lifespan, because everyone kind of gets this they call it like the 5 to 7 year hump, where they realize, hang on, I'm on exactly the same amount of money that I was when I was first graduated, or I might be on slightly less because that clinic that I was on earlier was busier. So I'm like, I don't actually change my wage through that. So everyone kind of hits this hump, and they get to that stage that I'm starting to get to, where they go, oh, hang on, I feel like all my mates are on like over $100,000. Like, why am I still sitting on this? And the reason is because you don't actually make much more past that unless you go out and start your own physio clinic. So I guarantee that, like, whoever's listening to this, if you count on your hand the number of physio clinics that are within like a 4K radius of where you are, there'd be probably as many fingers on your hands. Like, the market right now, and it might be different by the time like the 2027 kind of come out, but like, it's a saturated market. So it just means that, like, everyone can't make as much money because there's so many practices out there just hoarding patients or taking patients or splitting patients. So it's a really difficult market to kind of earn over 100,000, because you just have to either work yourself to the bone, and you can only make what you've made on commission. So there's no like really way to climb the ladder unless you go and nick off to make your own practice, where you'd probably, I don't know what the facts and figures are behind that, but you'd probably make significantly more. But even then, there's a lot of risk. I think there's another stat where I think 50% of physio clinics fail within the first year or something. So there's a lot of competition out there in regards to between clinics. So yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, and that was part of the reason why I did change and start doing the workers' comp side of things. Because like, when that COVID came around, like, I wasn't getting paid because like the work would shut down. There'd be like no base rate, no retainer, no commission for those weeks. It just meant that my caseload for the next 2 weeks after significantly reduced. So I then went and got another job, or a second job, so that would hold me down with my retainer, and I work, so I think it's 3 days a week, and I get pretty much $50,000 for just the 3 days a week work with the workers' comp. And it is sad, but like, the insurance companies pay a lot better than what the private practice physios get. So even if you are a really good private practice physio, no doubt that if you go into that corporate world, there is more money to be made there.
Does the pay in some regard, I mean, you do so much. Do you feel that the pay is reflective of the service that you provide?
Honestly, no. Like, it's a really, like, it is hard, and that's why there's the 7 year hump, because it doesn't always be reflective of how hard you work and how much you put in. I know that, like, if you go into a corporate world, then like, if you put in the extra hours, then you're guaranteed to get more money, or you're guaranteed to get that promotion. It doesn't work like that with physios. My seniors that are around me might be on slightly more money on me, but it's not reflective of almost how much training they have, unless they're the top dogs that have all the experience in the world, and they're the gurus, and they're the ones that I refer to because I'm like confused on this guy or whatever. So yeah, it does kind of cap out, and that's hard. That's a hard barrier to hit. So you either have to go and start and become like that next practice that is like what we kind of like one of the extra numbers on the fingers,
and massive risk as well.
And there's the massive risk behind it because you're going to be trying to spilling more into an already oversaturated market. So if you want to chase the dream and be the sports physio, you're looking at a massive pay cut from there. You're doing a lot of your work for minimal pay. So if you want to go and try and get a job at the Eagles, you're going to be working like pretty crappy hours for minimal dollars. If you want to work at a waffle team, which Western Australian like football league, you won't get paid until the end of the year, and it'll probably be a couple grand. And that includes all the trainings that you do, and that includes all your game days. You'll get paid more at a local footy club than you would at a waffle side.
Unbelievable. So that's all in some ways so glamorous, thinking about on the football field or on any sports field. It
doesn't look like that at all. So it's very different. So unless you like, I'm not saying to people don't go and chase this sports dream, because if you have the passion there, you'll do well. And like if you've got the dream, you've got the goal in mind. One of my sister's friends is a physio, and she's been doing it for years and years and years, and she's always stuck true to her word as being like wanting to be the top physio she is, because she was a sailor and she never made the Olympics. So now she wants to go to the Olympics, but as a physio, and that motivation drives her to like constantly work and grind at that goal, even though like the pay's not as good as what she could get if she went to another field or even to another job, really.
Very insightful, Tom. Very interesting perspective on the pay, which is a big topic for many students. So coming to our next question that we have for you, the question is, how do you prepare for this career pathway? And I guess apart from university and completing a degree and doing your training, is there any other ways you can prepare for this kind of career?
How can you prepare? So if you kind of get an idea on my journey, I was very, very into football. Like I'm from Melbourne originally, so footy's pretty much your bloody lifeblood, mate. Like you're playing footy at lunchtime, you're going to footy training after school,
all the time.
You're talking about footy with your family at the dinner table, and that's all we care about. But like growing up, if you live and breathe sport, then like it's automatically like a magnet towards where you wanna go to. So I guess like preparing for like being a physio, like I was one of the guys that put my hand up in the room at the start of that uni lecture and said that, this is what I thought physio was, but obviously those things have changed. So I think like, how do you prepare? It's a case of like, do you have a love for the human body, anatomy and everything around that kind of circles that? Do you have like the drive to want to make a difference and help people so how do you prepare for it? I think it's very much bred into you from a young age. In terms of like is like, how do you get into the course as well? It's a challenge. So for me, I had a bit of a journey as well. So in Western Australia, we're very, very lucky. So we have like 3 courses that are very, very good. Oh, I think it's 2 now. 2 physio courses that are like very, very good, and they're top notch. They take quite a lot of students. So the ATAR to get into it, relatively low. And that's one of the reasons why I moved over to WA from Melbourne, was to do physio, because I think the ATAR at the time was, they still call it ATAR, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Shows how old I am. So the ATAR at the time was, I think, 93 or 92, I want to even say, whereas in Melbourne it's 98.5 or something.
Wow.
So it's like significantly more competitive, because we just got a bigger population. I think there's only 2 physio schools there as well. So in order to prepare to get into the course from while you're at school, you got to work pretty bloody hard. If you're over on the eastern states, you've got to still work very hard, and you've got to do pretty well with all your anatomies, all your sciences, and it helps if you've got the PE backgrounds as well, because you're just more in tune with what goes on with the body. And even if you're wanting to go into the cardio stream, or you want to go down the stream of neurological physio as well, still pays to have a really good understanding of the human body. I did a biomedical science degree prior to joining physio. I originally went on prac at the end of my third year, and then I was kind of working in a science, like a pathology lab at the time, and then I was just having a yarn to all the people that were around me, just like not even really paying attention to what was on the petri dish, just having a good solid chat. And like I reckon 2 or 3 people said, "Mate, you should not be working in here. You need to go and work with people." So it's very much a career that if you enjoy being like face to face communicating with people, then like that's kind of how you prepare for it, because your communication is probably, I think there's stats, I can't remember the exact ones, but I think it's probably 70% of your treatment. So how well you can educate someone on their emotions, their pain, their movement and everything, even if you don't touch them. It's really common to have a treatment session now where you won't touch people and you'll make more of a difference for them long term than actually putting your hands on them. So yeah, it's just how much you enjoy talking to people. If you're an introvert that just does not like being around people, and it's probably going to be a hard career for you.
Oh, and I think this is part of, if you're considering this pathway, it's having this self-reflection about, what am I passionate about? Do I have this kind of skill set? Am I passionate about the human body and the anatomy? Maybe I have an outdoor-ish and I like people. It's this self-reflection, I think, that you've touched upon is a very important aspect, and very naturally it came to you. But for anyone who's listening out there, Tom, one being reflecting on themselves, and then university is not as easy as it seems. It's very competitive.
Yeah, getting into it anyway. Yeah. And actually, even when you're at uni, it's bloody hard course.
Hard course as well. Yeah. So next question that we have for yourself is, when did you know this career path was kind of right for you? And the reason why this question came up is that many students may find themselves realizing very early on, this is the pathway for me, or much later down the years, once they finish the degree, this is the pathway for me. At what age and when did you realize, and when was that light bulb moment where you're like, this is it, this is what I want to do?
So I reckon there was probably 2. So one once I before I even thought about wanting to do physio. I guess it was like in the mind somewhere, where I was probably at school, and I had so many injuries playing footy. So like amateur footy is a massive thing in Melbourne, but you get so many injuries. Like I was like constantly injured. So like just knowing how to rehab my injuries well, and like taking an interest into why my ankle was rolling like every 3rd week or something was really important to me, and how to prevent that as well. Injury prevention was massive. So yeah, I guess like just going through so many sporting injuries and being able to deal with and learning how to actually manage them, and then also prevent them as well. So injury prevention is just such a big field right now. So yeah, I guess it was when I was at school, wanting to like be a footy player, or be involved in that sporting environment even after I wasn't going to play anymore, was really important to me. But I guess there was another time when I was at uni. I was on a prac and I was doing one of the neuro placements that I was talking about, or when I was in a hospital, and when I had a patient that recently had a stroke, and he had called what we call ataxia, where when he was standing, he basically couldn't really put too much weight through his feet. But the way you treat it is you just you work on weight shifts, and you basically get someone in challenging positions, in standing positions, and then you work on their balance in that stage, and then eventually you start working towards gait retraining, walking and that sort of thing. And I had a bit of oversight from my supervisor at the time, and we ended up getting this guy walking for the first time out of a wheelchair. Wow. And it was a really, really special moment. His family was there, and the wife was there, she was crying, and then this guy was so happy, and he kind of sat down after and he just thanked us so much at that point in time. It's kind of really never left me, because I was like, holy crap, we can actually make a massive difference in people's lives. And it was kind of the first time I was like, this guy probably couldn't have done that or been in that position by himself without us being there to help him. So I guess that really flicked in my mind, where I was like, look, I'm passionate, I'm driven towards doing this. And even though I don't work in that field now, we still make a pretty solid difference to everyone that we see. And I'd hope that everyone that we talk to is better having having been treated and seen us. So, so I guess it definitely is. It definitely grew from just wanting to be in like a sporting field and wanting to not be locked up in a desk job or not being locked up in just like one office to being actually wanting to be able to make a difference to people's lives.
Amazing that you had these critical moments in your life. One already starting from a place where you loved playing footy, and then growing into when you are in the field, you have these moments, and I think that's just absolutely incredible, and probably very inspiring for people to know that there are moments in certain aspects of what you do that might just actually be the switch to realize that you're really passionate about it, and it's in you sometimes. It's not always there, and you can't always see it in front of you, especially when you're doing an assignment or you're doing some uni work. You're like, am I actually really passionate about this? But actually being and doing and seeing it in person is a different thing altogether.
Yeah, it's just like one of those things that just constantly evolves and changes, and like it is a journey. Like it's not just a straight pathway where you kind of like climb a rung of like getting to where you want to like get into that top promotion. It is a find yourself on your feet in that like stretch and that weaving kind of direction. It's not linear, but it's like you've kind of it's a great degree that allows you to kind of follow where your heart is and follow where you can feel like you can make a difference. And that's just been one of the things that like I've definitely learnt along the way. Like even though people might say that that workers' comp space that I was talking about is bland and different to what you'd originally be doing, you're able to make a massive difference to people's lives, even from like being a hands-off person. So even being able to chat to the person who you're playing golf with, if you can give them advice that they might be able to alleviate symptoms, or being able to direct someone's treatment who's their wife who's just had a hip replacement, if she hasn't like done the right things that kind of can make a difference to her long term, if you can kind of provide that advice based on what your experience and what your profession is, then people appreciate it. And it is a nice thing, and it's a nice thing to have.
Absolutely incredible. Tom, the last question that we have for you is, what would you do differently during your time of uni and even high school? I mean, if you had to kind of talk to your younger self and say, look, and trying to make him do differently to what he did, what would you say to him?
That is hard, That is hard.
And I mean, was there things that you could have done differently to make it better?
So basically, when I went to uni the second time, so my physio degree was my second degree, and I left Melbourne to go to Perth. Now, if you do uni for the second time, like, trust me, if you're not like the mature age student that is like annoying and asking all the questions, then you can do really well and you can kill it and you can have a really, really good time. Like moving state and then doing uni again for the second time was an unbelievable experience. Like I felt like I knew how to study. I felt like I knew how to socialize, make friends, knew how to have a work-life balance between the two. So in regards to what I would do differently at uni, I probably wouldn't do anything differently. Like my time at uni was awesome. So the second time I did it, in regards to what I would do differently at school versus my first degree, is I wouldn't do biomed. So anyone out there who's doing or thinking about doing biomed, I would really, really suggest think about what you want to do, research what job you want to get into after and the career pathways that are there, because it is a very dead end degree. I would say either go and strive to do physio straight away. So I moved over here. I could have done it straight up, but chose to do biomed. But biomed is very much like a degree that doesn't really give you what you think it is. So it's very much a pathway to just doing research, essentially. So yeah, as I said, what I would do differently is just I'd choose something different. I would even go and do something like just straight science over biomed, because it just even locks you into like a different field than what science would be. Science is so open that you could get into physio if you wanted to after, but biomed is just it is just a bit of a cagey system. Like you learn some really cool stuff, and like I learned some sick stuff that I can still use today, and I can have conversations that are that make make me even kind of go, oh, holy crap, I can remember some really awesome things from that. Like, but at the same time, like, it's like, in terms of career aspects, like I remember when I was like at that stage and I was kind of looking for like in my fourth year or third year. It must have been third year. When I was at my career side of the fence and we were going out and doing work placements, the list of jobs that you could do post biomedical science were pretty minimal. And you don't realize that until like after. I probably only chose biomed because I was like, that sounds like a really cool degree, rather than doing a lot of research into exactly why I wanted to do it. So like that'd be the one thing I'd change. What I'd do differently and what I'd choose differently is maybe science, like, or something else in that field. Go straight into physio because you can do it, and don't be scared about moving away straight away, and don't even be scared about moving states, because moving states is probably or moving to a new place to do a university degree is like one of the best things I think you can do. You'll learn a lot about yourself very, very quickly.
Very, very insightful, Tom. And that really wraps up all our questions that we have for you today, mate. Absolute pleasure having you here and sharing your very honest insights and thoughts. For our listeners who have more questions for Tom that did not feature on our list today and would like to connect with him, just visit our website, careerview.com.au. This is where you'll find Tom's profile and you can email him with more questions, which I'm sure he'll be happy to answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and with every episode, please don't forget to submit your questions you want to know, especially to young professionals who've been there and have done that, just like Tom, in the career pathway of physio. Tom, once again, it's been great having you here today.
No worries, mate.
As a final note, what would you say to anyone who is considering this pathway moving forward?
I guess what it would be was just if you're gonna go into the physio world and the physio space, then like do it for the love of human body, do it for the love of people, do it for the love of wanting to make a difference with someone else. Don't do it because you think that like it's going to be a really good money maker, because there's other ways to do that. It's a case of you've got to do it because you enjoy that side of like function, anatomy, like physiology, and don't just think that physio is purely about that person in a room that cracks backs or does things on a sporting field. If you're going to go into it, or like you're thinking about going into it, expand your horizons and go and look up those 3 areas that we talked about before, because there is a million other worlds that you can kind of go and explore with it, and it's an open door as soon as you walk in there.
A pleasure, Tom. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.